Hi, I'm Jamie from Right On with Jamie, and today we're going to discuss complex sentences in writing. But first, we need to determine what complex sentences are and how using them can improve your writing. Regardless of the subject you're writing about or the audience you're writing for, when you write, you need to arrange your essay, research paper, narrative, etc., so your readers can understand and follow the ideas you are presenting. Complex sentences demonstrate a relationship, usually a stronger idea joined to a weaker idea, or a controlling idea joined to a secondary, less important idea. However, sometimes the independent clause is the weaker idea when compared to the dependent clause. So, when is a good time to use a complex sentence? There are numerous times that a complex sentence is the right choice for what you are writing. First, when you want to show relationships between clauses such as cause and effect, compare and contrast, and time relationships, complex sentences are a fantastic choice. You can also use them to imitate the complicated thinking needed to understand certain types of ideas, such as logic. Basically, they can duplicate the patterns of deep thinking. Complex sentences can force the reader to focus on one part of a sentence, one idea, rather than another part of a sentence. You can also combine small, choppy sentences into more fluent, longer sentences. Additionally, complex sentences can form a type of informal cumulative sentence that is patterned on the way people speak naturally. We don't speak in short, choppy sentences, so using complex sentences will add a natural flair to your writing. Using complex sentences makes anything easier to read. Nothing distracts your reader more than short, choppy, simple sentences. It gives the reader a stop-start type of flow or lack of flow. You might be asking, Jamie, how can I use complex sentences in my writing? Oh, I'm so glad that you asked. Today, we are going to cover how to write a complex sentence and use it in your writing. So let's begin. Lee Iacocca once said, "The discipline of writing something down is the first step toward making it happen." In other words, actually making an effort to write something will help you start to make that thing a reality. Because the expression of your thoughts is critical to communication, you should do everything possible to make your written work easy to read and comprehend. Also, you will be addressing 2 of the 6 traits of writing when you use complex sentences in your writing. First is sentence fluency, because complex sentences will make your sentences flow, begin in various ways, and help add different types of sentences to your writing. And second is conventions, because complex sentences require both subordinate and independent clauses, which can help your readers see how the ideas connect to each other in a logical manner. Now, let's quickly review what complex sentences are and how they are used in writing. Complex sentences contain an independent clause and at least one dependent clause. An independent clause has the ability to stand alone as a sentence. It makes a complete thought. A dependent clause or subordinate clause cannot stand alone, even though it has a subject and verb. A subordinate clause depends on the rest of the sentence in order to be considered complete. Otherwise, it would be considered a fragment. Let's take a look at this example of a complex sentence to identify both the independent and the dependent or subordinate clause. I was very tired in the morning because I didn't go to bed last night. The independent clause, I was very tired in the morning, contains a subject, I, and a verb, was tired, and could stand alone as a sentence. The subordinate clause, because I didn't go to bed last night, also contains a subject, I, and a verb, did go, but has a subordinating conjunction, because, at the beginning of the clause, so it would not be able to stand alone as a sentence. An interesting side note is that in this case, the subordinate clause could also be placed at the beginning of the sentence, and the sentence would still make sense. Because I didn't go to bed last night, comma, I was very tired in the morning. Both of these sentences would be considered complex sentences. Any sentence with a subordinate clause is a complex sentence, regardless of whether the subordinate clause is before or after the independent clause. A complex sentence contains both an independent and a dependent or subordinate clause. A subordinate clause begins with a subordinating conjunction and is followed by a subject and verb. Although it has a subject and verb, it cannot stand on its own and is not a complete sentence. Think of it this way. The prefix sub, as in subordinating or subordinate clause, is used with the meaning under, below, beneath, or secondary. A subordinate clause is secondary to an independent clause. It relies on the independent clause to make it a complete sentence. Let's take a look at a couple of examples. Although Kaylee broke her foot. In this subordinate clause, there is a subject, Kaylee, and a verb, broke. But the subordinating conjunction although at the beginning keeps it from being an independent clause and makes it a subordinate clause. Basically, it doesn't make sense by itself. It leaves the reader with an unfinished feeling. Although Kaylee broke her foot. What? If there was an independent clause following it, like, although Kaylee broke her foot, comma, she continued to exercise regularly, then it would make sense. She continued to exercise regularly is an independent clause, and when added to the dependent clause or subordinate clause, you have a complex sentence. Another example would be, because I didn't go to bed. We've got a subject, I, and a verb, did go, but the subordinating conjunction, because, keeps this from being an independent clause. Again, a subordinate clause on its own leaves the reader with a sense of not getting the whole story. Because I didn't go to bed, what happened? Was I tired the next day? Did I oversleep? Did I miss an appointment? What? We need the independent clause to clear up the mystery. I overslept today because I didn't go to bed. Mystery solved. It's important to note that any sentence with a subordinate clause is a complex sentence, even if the subordinate clause comes after the independent clause. However, if the subordinate clause is at the beginning of the sentence, it must be followed by a comma. In order to write a complex sentence, you need to develop a subordinate clause, and a subordinate clause must begin with a subordinating conjunction. Therefore, you need to be able to recognize the subordinate conjunctions. After, although, as, because, even though, before, since, so that, until, unless, when, and while. If you think about it, some of these really lend themselves to presenting an opposing viewpoint in an argumentative essay. Although many people believe opposing viewpoint, comma, I believe your viewpoint. Or, even though some people support opposing viewpoint, comma, I am definitely in favor of your viewpoint. If you have the worksheet for this lesson, you can pause the video here and answer questions 1 through 6. Review the previous section of the video to help you determine the correct answers. I hope you enjoyed this introduction to complex sentences in writing. If you would like the entire lesson, click on the links in the description. I have both a middle school and a high school version. The lesson comes complete with both a digital component ready to be used in any learning management system for independent student instruction and a classroom-ready component with PowerPoint and PDFs. Detailed lesson plans and the rest of this entertaining instructional video complete the lesson. This resource is also part of a sentence fluency and grammar bundle that includes the following lessons: adverbs, comma splices, commas in a list, complex sentences as transitions, complex sentences, compound sentences, sentence fragments and run-on sentences, gerunds, prepositions and prepositional phrases, and transition words. Thanks for watching my video, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Right on!